Hey everybody, John, you were here, Maryland K-12. This week we're talking a little bit more about the politics in the classroom. Always a favorite topic. I guess what I want to point out is this. Since the whole Charlie Kirk issue, we've gotten a lot of information about this organization of his called Turning Point USA, and they're working on getting these chapters in the schools. And that's all well and good, but so where does what about some of the other ones? Where does this come from? Where does this what is this all about? So I did a little digging, as I always do, to see what's going on, and there are lots and lots and lots of these chapters in different on different sides of the aisle, if you will. Some of the conservative leaning ones are called, well, obviously Turning Point USA. I get that in a second. There's the High School Democrats of America. There's which is obviously a left-leaning group. There's called Students Demand Action, Sunrise Movements, and I'm just looking over some of my list here. Young America's Foundation is a conservative organization. Leadership Institute's conservative. Progress Force is conservative. Sunrise Students Demand Action. New Voters is a progressive one. So there's lots and lots of these different things. But the difference recently is that the Turning Point USA, what they have is they have a much more centralized and branding theme going on now, and they're big, they're popular, and a lot of the conservatives want to get this into the schools. And when I say into the schools, what that means is a club or an organization. Okay, think about this. When you went to school, you had the Glee Club, the student debate team. You had, of course, there's all the sports and all the music organizations, the art club, the Spanish club, all this. Well, now we have, and we've had these before. They've been around forever, and along with them come certain caveats, certain restrictions. Generally speaking, they're allowed. They're allowed in school on either side of the aisle. Either side of the aisle. So when you start seeing what you're going to see, you can mark my word that as the Turning Point USA, works its way into schools, pretty soon you're going to start seeing things like the Democrats of America and some of these other left-leaning groups are going to start to try and get some equal time. It's going to be tough right now because the turning point is really they've got a lot of momentum behind that cause. So what happens is this: these clubs, they're allowed to meet, they're allowed to basically use the facilities. They can meet, they can have a faculty sponsor who is supposed to be basically just providing supervision. They're supposed to meet outside of academic times. They're not meeting during the day. They're meeting after school, before school, during lunch, that sort of thing. They can, as long as it's not disruptive, doesn't cause any problems, they're free to, meet and become a chapter in that group as much as they want. They're allowed to use the bulletin boards in the facilities, as any other, as the student government association would, or as the, whatever one. The problem comes is when someone else says, "Hey, I don't like that, and I'm gonna, make my voice heard to say I think you're wrong." And therein it starts. And if it becomes too much of a disruption, then schools put an end to it, supposedly. But one of the things that we found is that schools generally don't like to deal with that. If there's any type of disruption, they just want to put an end to it instead of helping force. Instead of working their way through the disruption, they just want to put an end to it. And I've been there, and I don't understand. I completely understand why that is. I remember one time when I was at a middle school, some kids came to me and said they wanted to start a Christian group, 100% religious. They wanted to meet during the club time when everyone else met, And I looked into it a little bit, and absolutely. So I solicited um, a faculty member who was more than willing to do it. And her role, the faculty member's role, was very simply she was there to supervise, because you can't have kids unsupervised. She did not participate in the meetings. She did not offer guidance one way or the other. If they needed a pass to go to the bathroom, they would ask her for that. And she took roll, and we accounted for them, and that was it. We basically just gave them the room, and it went relatively well. And that's kind of the way it's supposed to be. But you know as well as I do that the more these political groups start building up into these schools, the more issues are going to be. And I'll tell you why. It's because I saw something today. It might be, and I have an article coming out Tuesday. Make sure you check my article out, or it may already be out. I don't know when I'm going to publish this. What it says is, you see a lot of people will say things like, a lot of administrators will say, like, hey, this is great as long as it doesn't become a platform for divisive rhetoric. Okay? What does divisive rhetoric mean? Okay? When someone says something you don't like, is that divisive? Suppose you just say, yeah, we're going to have a Turning Point USA chapter, and these kids are all going to come in with their Make America Great Again and their Trump shirts, and they're going to be. Is that divisive? I'm not saying it is or not. I'm just asking the question. All right, and then you look at the other side. Suppose someone comes in with they're all dressed in blue, and Democrats forever, and Barack Obama, and whatever, and then is that divisive? There's an example I used in my article that came out today that says, here's one for you. Suppose you're in an elementary school and you see a big thing on a bulletin board, a bunch of flowers and stuff. It says, be kind. Everybody should be kind, right? Yeah, absolutely. Everybody should be kind. Now, the next question is, suppose there's a rainbow around that. And you say, okay, be kind. Well, is it different now because it has a rainbow? It starts to get a little murky. So anyway, I'm just saying, as far as these groups go in school, they're free to have their own time. They are equally there. There's a lot of them on the left. There's a lot of them on the right. It's the Turning Point USA has all the momentum now because they have a nationally organized not foundation, but they have a nationally organized organization, and they have a lot of branding and they have a lot of momentum. And there are some states right now that are actually starting to require that schools all have a chapter of this. I'm not so sure I think that. I believe if it comes from the students, like the example I gave you about the religious group that I dealt with, if it comes from within, absolutely. Then as a school system, we are there to provide that forum for them, and give them the opportunity. This is especially true in high school, a little bit in middle school, high school. Anyway, just thought I'd throw that out. A lot of these, just some quick numbers. The have 10,000 or 1,200. Turning Point USA right now has 1,200 plus chapters, and 37,000 plus new chapter applications. 37,000. They had 1,200 chapters. Now they have 37,000 new chapter applications. So they are just exploding. You may think that's a good thing. You may think that's a bad thing. But it's a thing. High school Democrats, they have been some of the more progressive left leaning groups have been around for a long time, but they tend to be I don't want to say they're dormant, but they just kind of organic, and they've been kind of stabilized for a while. They don't have the explosiveness right now that the other ones do. So anyway, Students Demand Action, which is a left look at my notes here. Looking at the left leaning group is about 800 plus groups nationwide. Sunrise Movement has 100 plus hubs. They call them hubs. They have dozens in high schools, and that's more about climate-focused, Green New Deal, that sort of thing. The Students Demand Action is issue-based activism focused on gun violence prevention. Very, very progressive leaning. So anyway, these groups have been there. They've been there for a while, and they're going to continue to be there. So right now in Maryland, that hasn't become a big issue yet, but I'm sure it's only a matter of time before we start to see the results of this. So anyway, I hope I didn't go on too long. Politics in the classroom is always a nice, calm It's always a nice topic. Anyway, if you got any questions, I'd love to hear from you. Starting to go get some more comments. Give me your comments one way or the other. Thanks. Have a great day.